or they can download 1 TB and never watch it. So nowadays you don't download. Nowadays I think you people download documentaries, other kind of stuff. No. Did anyone attempt this year essay, any topic? Okay. Which topic? Choices. Okay. You also attempted. You said which topic? Okay. Okay. Ship and smile. This side? Nobody attempted? Live? Okay. So, very good afternoon, everyone. So, all of you at lunch? Thanks. So, today we are going to discuss this year's UPSC Civil Services 2022 essay paper. So, in that I am not going to discuss every topic in depth. So, I will discuss 2 to 3 topics in depth, and remaining topics I will give you broad outline. So, what are the dimensions that you should be bringing in the essay, right? And also I will make their meanings more clear to you, because the interpretations are very important in these topics. So, before we move into this analysis and discussion of these topics, what are the observations from this year essay paper? You know, just before mains, there were students, I was in Delhi one day before the essay exam. Some of them came and told that, so this year I think or we think there will be more GS topics. It won't be like last 2 years, and it will be balanced that 3-4 philosophical topics and 3-4 GS topics will be there. So they were expecting topics on agriculture, cyber security, global warming, democracy, media, culture, like this. So I told that with all the certainty, no, that is not going to be the case. It will be a repeat of last year, but I expect it to be slightly on difficult side, right? Now, it is similar to last year, the kind of topics we have got. So there are 2 broad observations in the essay paper. So called, now you might have come across these philosophical topics everywhere. We talk about it regularly, right? So there are philosophical topics and there are GS topics as well. That paper still has GS topics. Now what they started doing, UPSC 3 years ago, started 4 years ago, that these GS topics were disguised as philosophical topics. You don't see direct reference to key issues that you come across in current affairs or in general studies papers, right? But they are still related to 3 to 4 key components of all 4 GS papers. Now the weightage has shifted to more of ethics related topics, which we call as philosophical essays, and these 3-4 topics broadly vary from one related to society or sociology, one related to polity or politics, one related to economy, and one related to environment, right? So these are the broad themes. So that UPSC started asking in a disguised manner. Now this year what they have done is that they have gone one step ahead compared to last year, right? The topics which we call as disguised GS topics, they are interdisciplinary in nature, right? We see the intersection between environment and economy. They have brought them together and created a topic. There is another topic, English literature and polity or politics, right? So where the poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. So now English literature you don't study, right? Somebody might be having a background in literature, or somebody may be having a hobby or interest in reading literature, right? So that is your choice, but nonetheless everybody has read English literature till class 10th. You had English subject, right? Right. So you used to memorize poems and you know some poets also. So another topic is bringing together of science and history, right? So there is historical reference and there is reference to science. So that they have created another topic where you have to bring multi-disciplines, like basically you are bringing 2-3 disciplines and creating a topic out of it, and they are expecting how you bring the overlap between these different disciplines. So now that is difficult, so to suddenly to do in the examination hall, right? So if you are not aware of English literature, but you may be very good in political science, so people are very good in political science, right? So you study PSI or you study IR, right? We see constantly these examples, but if you are not aware of English literature, you cannot touch the topic. You cannot just write entirely on political science. So similarly in economy and environment, you may be too good in ecological concepts, environment, but if your economic concepts are weak, then you cannot touch the subject. So most of the people do the mistake of focusing too much on one of the keywords in the topic, not on the every topic, right? For example, the tendency, especially in the beginners or in those people who are not guided well, is to focus too much on what they know. They basically write what they know more on the paper, because one particular keyword appeals to them, they are well prepared and they start writing more number of content related to that. So that UPSC wanted to somehow destroy. Now that another topic also. So you need to be good in science and history. See the nature of topics, the humanities and then there is science, right? Or there is literature, there is another humanities. So you have to holistically prepare for every kind of discipline that is out there, right? So now if you look into NEP, New Education Policy, now that is the demand from the higher education, right? So the government is going towards into the future where the demand is that students are equipped to handle these diverse, more challenging tasks, the challenges in a more interdisciplinary manner. I mean that interdisciplinary approach is the need of the hour. So that is how the thinking. So now you going to be a civil servant should be trained or should be sensitized in that direction. So first understand that is the demand of the paper. It is not like just philosophy that you bring some moral philosophy, some kind of economic concepts and make an essay here, right? So and then there is another, like the underlying of everything is that the thorough checking of your analytical and critical thinking abilities, right? If you do not have this ability, you cannot do justice to these kind of topics. So one mistake people do is that too much focus on one of the keywords. Another mistake is that from beginning to end they just justify the topic with n number of examples. So today morning also I was checking few essays. So what they have done is that they have written essays supporting the statement. First they agree with the statement and then they start supporting the statement with multiple examples, right? So that is another big mistake people make. Now before we start with the first topic, my request is that if somebody who has written mains, please walk out, right? If somebody who has written mains, please don't watch this live session. If you have written mains, don't watch this video till your optional is done, right? The reason is, so I might say something, right? So that whatever you might have written may not match with it, right? And again I am not the final authority here, so we are going to have a conversation here. I will be getting ideas from you also and I will be giving idea from my side also, that we are going to arrive at what are the different dimensions that we should be including in the topics. So some of the dimensions people might have missed, those are written mains. Now they should not feel like, yeah, I should have thought about it, right? I knew about it, I should have written more about it. So that kind of feeling will affect your performance in optional or even in language paper. So please don't watch this video. Now the first topic, forests are the best case studies for economic excellence, right. So forests are the best case studies for economic excellence. I read 2 essays this morning and one in Lucknow also, right, day before yesterday. All the 3 essays I read were misinterpreted, right. So if I am misinterpreting this topic, you correct me, right. So I am going to tell what is my interpretation of the topic. Now I interpret every topic based on first trying to understand the demand of the topic. First I try to understand the demand of the topic based on the keywords that are there in the topic. Every word in an essay topic is very important. UPSC doesn't just pick content from somewhere and copy paste it. So there are committees, there are people behind, before finalizing the essay paper, there are humans, intellectuals, professors. They sit and deliberate, right. They might have taken a half line from a quote, right. They might have created their own topic, but behind that there is so much of deliberation, that what is that we want to test from a candidate when the candidate attempts this topic, right. So the each keyword are carefully put. So the topic you should look at as an unit, as a whole, not from keyword perspective. So the meaning of this topic according to me is that, so the forests are the best case studies for economic excellence. So what it says, that economic excellence, what is the meaning of excellence? Being very good at something, when you say well done, so that is the achieving the best possible, right, result in anything, in any task. So that is the excellence. Now what is economic excellence? Here economic excellence is achieving the best for an economy, or coming out with the best possible economic model, economic thinking, or economic policy, or economic strategy, anything, right. So that is economic excellence. Now the topic says that forests are the best case studies for achieving that economic excellence. Case study means what? Case study is a detailed, closely examined study of a process, an institution, phenomena of an individual, or anything. So like for example, we can make a case study out of failure of Kingfisher. Why did that airline fail? That is a case study, right. So we can make a case study, why did Amazon succeed in India or failed in India? That can be a case study. So what you are doing, you are considering every possible detail of that particular case, different stakeholders, different facts related to the case, different events related to the case. You are considering everything and then coming up with a case study. Now what is the purpose of the case study? The purpose of the case study is to present you the case in front of you, right, to solve or to learn from it. In UPSC case studies, they are giving you to solve, you have to come up with a course of action to solve a problem. They are creating a dilemma there. Every case study need not be a dilemma here, right. A case study can be an example in itself where you can learn from. So here the forests are the live, real case studies for economic excellence. So forests present us the case studies in front of us. They provide us case studies to come up with better economic models, better economic processes, anything related to economy, achieving economic excellence. It may be for a nation, it may be for an institution, it may be for a family, right, or it may be for the globe also, or to solve economic problems. So now the people have interpreted that forests produces goods for economic excellence. Did you get the difference? All of you, did you get the difference? Right. So that some people have interpreted it as the forests are rich source of resources, any kind of resources that are useful for economic well-being or economic excellence. So that is not the demand of the topic. They would have simply given that. So why provide as a case study? right. So, the case study means that they are the source of investigation, you can study from it, right, you can learn from the forests. So, now which brings us to the forests. So, where you need to understand forests. So, you disagree with me, no? So, you are curious. So, forests, so what are forests now? What are forests? Forests are trees. Yeah, of course, everybody knows what is a forest, right. So, if you Google definition, there are definition by some UN agencies about forests. Ministry of Environment and Forest will have its own definition of forest. But going by our understanding of forest, so forest is an ecosystem, right, it is part of ecology, right. So, there are multiple ecological processes that are happening. So, interaction between biotic and abiotic, right, components are taking place all the time in a forest. So, there are so many agents in forest, not just trees and not just other microorganisms. So, there are tribals, there are different cultures embedded within the forest, right. So, there are rivers flowing through forest, there are many kind of disasters that keep taking place in the forest. So, there are n number of phenomena which are associated with the forest. So, basically here you have to come to the ecological concepts, right. So, there is a branch of economics known as ecological economics. So, are you aware of that? What is it? So, people can interpret it as environmental economics, right, and write about environment related issues and the economy part, but ecological economics is totally different from environmental economics. So, what I studied is, what I read is that environmental economics or resource economics are subdomains of the field of economics, right, whereas ecological economics is not the subdomain, it itself is a separate discipline which is known as interdisciplinary. Similarly, it is known as transdisciplinary field. So, what is the difference between the interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary?
Interdisciplinary has something that overlaps.
Correct, very good.
Multidisciplinary is when it's more like a conglomeration of things.
Good. So, what is the transdisciplinary?
Surpassing its own
Yeah, it is closely related to multidisciplinary. There are overlapping also. At the same time, there are more number of disciplines coming together, but the domain can also go beyond a particular discipline. For example, ecological, this transdisciplinary domain, so it deals with ecology, economics, anthropology, archaeology, history and certain biological sciences, right. So, there is this transdisciplinary nature to this particular. So, now why am I talking about it? Because this is important to understand. Now, this topic should be attempted only if people know their ecological concepts very well and economic concepts very well, right. So, before that one should understand the meaning of the topic very well also. So, if these two are not happening, it is safe to leave the topic totally unattempted, untouched. Otherwise, every year it is happening, like last year the cradle which rocks the ants that rocks the cradle will rule the world. So, most of the people wrote only from the feminist perspective, women angle. So, the scores came down. So, like that there was another topic before that year, right, that patriarchy, though is a significant structure of social inequality. Patriarchy, though not significant, something like though invisible, patriarchy though invisible is a significant structure of social inequality. Almost everybody who attempted the topic wrote only from the feminist angle, only gender inequality perspective. The topic mentioned social inequality, but because the word patriarchy was there, people ignored the social inequality and wrote only from the gender inequality. So when they do it like this, that year marks came down. People who were scoring 130, 140 in marks, they got their marks reduced in the both years, those who attempted these two topics. So this year I am not sure, I mean there are people who are good in concepts, I hope they have attempted well. So first you should know what is economic excellence, then you should know what is, so in this essay when you start writing, so in the introduction what will you write for this kind of topic? Forests are the best case studies for economic excellence. The meaning is clear, right? So can somebody explain from the crowd what is the meaning of the topic? If it is clear.
Ecology is economy.
Ecology is economy.
Like that, I mean, there's a virtuous cycle in forests. Like everything is
Correct.
reused and reduced. And there's nothing going waste in forests. So like that, economy,
Yeah, we can learn from.
from them.
Okay. So economy can learn from ecology or like the forest, right? So now what is ecological economics? So it's a transdisciplinary subject. Basically it tries to say that there is a kind of limit to growth, right? So now the economy cannot indefinitely grow. It has to stagnate at certain point of time, right? So even the forests also have a life cycle. So basically the economy cannot grow forever. It should understand that there is always a limit put by either resource constraints. Now the how many of you have studied how many of you are good in economics here? You think you are good in economics or you have economic background? Anyone? No, I won't ask question, I will ask my doubts with you, right? So the conventional economics believes that technology can address the resource constraint problem, thereby perpetuating the economic cycle. So did you get this? So economists are so confident that they can recommend model which can, which can help maximize profit or maximize production, right, or maximize redistribution or anything, but at the core of everything is the usage of resources, right? But it believes that the technology can address that resource crunch. But ecological economics doesn't believe in that. They should be a sustainable model. So it basically rests on few key concepts like steady state economics. What is steady state economics? So these are like some of the concepts that should be there in the essay. So I am sure evaluator will be looking at these kind of concepts. What is steady state economics? What is steady state?
Constant.
Hmm?
Something that's constant.
Yes? No, there is a difference between steady state and stagnancy. When we say stagnancy in economy, there is high unemployment, low production. So there are like negative phenomena. So the steady state is that it says that there are limited resources and there is limited population. The economic growth is sufficient or enough to meet the demand of that much population. So it doesn't seek to grow beyond that, right? So it seeks to provide justice in terms of giving them resources, distribution, everything, but in terms of meeting the current demand. Now it doesn't seek to go beyond certain limits. So it maintains the steady state. So that is what steady state economics, right? And then the concept of carrying capacity, right? What is carrying capacity?
The maximum
Maximum limit of. So how many of you get prelims? Huh? So what is carrying capacity? You must have read, no? Shankar book of economics, or biology, ecology, concepts. What is when we say carrying capacity of Earth? What is carrying capacity? Hmm? Pardon this? Hmm. Correct. So again it is about the limiting concept. So the carrying capacity is the ability of the planet or ability of an ecosystem or a biome to sustain the life that is present there, right. So that is the carrying capacity. So again that it has a limit. So if you exceed either through huge population or by exploiting resources or by destroying the habitat, it gets destroyed. Now for this essay what you need to do, select like that 5 to 6 broader concepts, and from these concepts what you can apply in the achieving economic excellence, right. So now there are many things that we can learn from forest. One, as somebody said, no, forest are, who said that? It's a virtuous cycle. It is a self-sustaining model. If you leave it undisturbed, so what happens? Forest grows, right, but there can be a forest fire as well, or there can be a drought or something, but again it replaces, it takes its time, but again it grows. Can we apply that model in the economy, right? So forest teaches so many things. So what are the other things that we can learn from forests?
Nothing goes to waste.
Nothing goes to waste. Everything is recycled. Circular economy. The concept of circular economy can be, pardon? Yes? Garbage? Carbon, very good, nice. Carbon sequestration. So the concept is that here the carbon sequestration happens, but again it is linked with the climate processes. It is intricately linked with so other phenomenon. It again, the forest doesn't survive in an isolation, right. So it needs the support of conducive climate or something, right. So we might harm it, that is a different thing, but the climate, carbon sequestration, so it sequesters the carbon, right, it stores. Carbon sequestration is absorbing the carbon and storing it, right. Then inclusive. Correct. So that is kind of inclusive development concept what is saying. Every organism, right, dead or alive, especially in the forest, have equal access to the resources when the competition in the forest is fair, right. When its balance is not harmed, everybody can survive. So they go through their own life cycle, but everybody can survive and thrive also, right. So you identify what are the different lessons that you can learn. So forest teaches lessons in sustainability. It teaches the diversity concept. So diversity is the strength of the forest. So the more diverse the forest, the more resilient the forest is to any kind of shocks, right. So now diversity you can bring everywhere in the economy, right, in terms of starting with policy formulation, in terms of getting diverse opinions, views, to taking into consideration the diversity in the culture itself. Yeah, so diverse ways of occupations, encouraging diversity in terms of industries, right. So why focus only on the service industry? You can focus on everything, diverse industries, so that everyone contributes, right. And then all the food chains and the food web concept. So if there is imbalance, now if there is a species that is is extinct or something, or if it is left to one species which is dominant, right, or if you remove the keystone species from the ecology, so what happens? So the concept of monopoly, right, in an economy, invasive species, right. So in terms of like FDI or whatever it is, right. So I don't know. So you can link so many concepts. Now all these examples are still justifying the topic. Again, this does not constitute the entire essay. So after in the introduction, see, I will give you a formula. In introduction, I don't know what you will write. Two things must be present. One, the context. Second one is the significance. Now you understand what is the context of this topic or what is the significance of this topic. That is up to you, right? So based on your the reading of different books, reading of GS, reading of current affairs, reading of these key concepts, understand the what is the, again these two ideas must be as broad as possible in the introduction. That is the third formula. They should not be very narrow, too specific in their details, right? They should be broad, they should be a statement, they should be ideas in themselves, where the introduction gives me a window to into your analytical thinking, right? To some extent critical thinking in the thesis statement. So there is difference between analytical and critical thinking. So analytical thinking is your ability to look into ideas closely, right? So you can break them into small parts, examine them closely, interlink them, right? So explain those concepts in a lucid, simple manner. So this writing these statements is not a 1 day or 2 days work. It comes with more than practice, it comes with similar thinking, that kind of thinking. So I am telling you, in essay, introduction and conclusion are the most important parts for me. The body is important, I am not saying, but it is in the introduction and it is in the conclusion most people write their original content in terms of, you know, what is their opinion about the topic, what is, as I said, significance, the context, right? So in a philosophical way you can write, in a contemplative manner you can write, right? But never start with a story, right? Story is again going into the very specific aspect of the topic. You cannot, through your story, you know, like, you be honest here, through your story you cannot touch ecology also, economy also, the case study aspect also in your introduction. Your one story will not give glimpse of everything. Even if your story is giving it, your story is just serving the purpose of saying yes to the topic. It is a yes meant to the topic. You are just saying yes. So this is the topic, I understand. So this story is basically simplifying the topic for you, right? So that is not the expectation of UPSC. If they are giving you challenging topic, then their expectation is that you equally challenge them, right? So don't be, what do you call that, in terms of under ambitious, underwhelming. It should not be underwhelming, right? Again, it should not be like overwhelming, but it should be sufficient enough to understand that you are an individual, you are a thinking individual, and you possess distinct, individual, unique personality, right, because of your reading or something. So this is the formula for introduction. So then you write the thesis statement, that in this essay we will broadly discuss, so what are the lessons, right, what are the takeaways that economic planners or we will discuss what is economic excellence and what is a case study here. You can say this kind of sentences and then give the opinion that indeed the best lesson that economy can learn comes from the forests. So in what ways we will define here, and also if there are any limitations, right? Of course everything cannot be learnt, there will be certain limitations. So if any, we will bring that also, and then we will look into the future, in the sense that, so when we are recklessly, you know, destroying this forest and everything, so what does it mean to economic planning or economic development or something? So you can bring like 3 to 4 broad dimensions here. So that could be your thesis statement. Now what is the purpose of economic excellence? This also you can define in your own way. So now if you Google economic excellence, you will not find a single definition anywhere. I tried doing it for 2 to 3 hours. You don't get definition of economic excellence anywhere. There are some articles, there are institutions for economic excellence, this and that, but you don't have a definition for that. Concept doesn't exist. Economic excellence, it is someone in UPSC has coined this, right? So the economic excellence you can define on your own. Now you will define, always any definition has a purpose. right, an end goal also. Now what is the end goal of economic excellence? It is nothing but human well-being, right. The human well-being is the end goal of economic excellence. So now in this topic you have to link that also. It is not just that saying this lesson can be put into this particular economic concept or a lesson or something. So now human excellence can be achieved only through forests or by learning lessons from forest and applying in economy. Similarly, in these kind of topics you should also think if you can replace economy here and if you can put technological excellence. I am just asking random hypothetical question here, right. Technological excellence or in general institutional excellence or political excellence, right. Some topics it might make little sense, right, but if you go deeply it makes more sense in the economic excellence angle, right. You just try replacing that economic and with other words, you won't get like political excellence for example, right. So what can political excellence learn from forests? Not to fight? Can they learn not to fight from forests? Not to? Not to warding, yes, warding. But there are some chimps, that ants. There are animals which actually ward for entire winter or summer. And these people say the same thing. I mean political hibernation, so let me. Right. So it doesn't make sense. Got it? So the question of logics comes into picture. So anything that you can logically derive, you have to put it here. So like this in the body, you have to one section like 2 to 3 pages saying that these are the things that forest acts as case study, right. So with the goal of human well-being. So now should we solely look at forest? Do we have like why we have ignored? There should be a why component. So why it is not a dominant thinking? Why we have ignored forests for this, right? So many people, this ecological economics is not a mainstream subject. The way you study sociology or nowadays artificial intelligence or something, right? So in the context of climate change, in the context of so many natural disasters that are taking place everywhere, in the context of you might be reading in some countries there are economic meltdown and there are like hyperinflation, right. So there are many countries going through so much of economic crisis. So despite this, why this is not a dominant thinking, why we haven't focused on this? Here you can reason out like why we have sidelined this particular discipline. So that could be component. So at the end of the day, essay is a collection of your opinion on the topic in a coherent manner, right. So there is no fixed rule that you have to restrict to only this particular opinion. So as long as it makes logical sense, you can go for multiple opinions. So in my opinion, there should be minimum why, right. So for example, why forest act as that you are addressing, case studies. Or why should forest learn from or economy learn from? Both are the same questions. Then why it is sidelined, right, this particular branch, and what are the other why you can think of? Look at the topic.
Why is it the best one?
Why is it the best one? So that in the first part you can combine that like why aspect. Why that? Very nice, good. Why that in the significance context part, if in the introduction if I introduce that, it is like high time, it is the sun is shining to repair your roof right now. That is the another topic in the right. So then this is high time that NEP introduces this particular discipline, or universities, IITs introduce this in the. So this is where critical thinking comes into picture. Instead of saying that NEP has already brought this or our education system has already done this, so you have to say what is the shortcoming and how we can plug it, right. So give weightage to each of these dimensions, like more for the first aspect, right, because this particular topic I usually give 2 examples for justification of the topic and then move to another dimension, but for this you will need more justifications. So you have to prove that your concepts are really strong, right. So in forest there is healthy competition, in forest there is cooperation, there is forest harmony is there, right, between everyone. So in the forests are self sustaining, so they don't require like IMF fund or anything, right. Yeah, so you can introduce organic fertilizer, somehow they will absorb and they will grow, so you don't have to worry about it. And then so the processes that take place in the forests are vital for other planetary processes. So your healthy forest is equally important for a healthy planet, right. And the concepts like the sustainable scale, fair distribution, efficient allocation, which are core economic concepts, are actually keep happening in the forest. Again, you might have heard the invisible hand concept in economics. What is it?
Takes care of itself.
Hmm?
Market forces the carrier themselves. So the government shouldn't regulate.
Correct. So the economy is a big machine that takes care of itself. So all the processes, where to collect resources, where to allot resources. So whatever output we get, how to distribute these resources, is nobody actually controlling or guiding it. It's a self-sustaining, it keeps happening. Yes. So there is kind of invisible hand in the forest also. So it's not that somebody sitting and guiding it. So kai gambe ata, it's not, nobody is actually doing it. It is right. So you can learn from, for example, the fair distribution. Yeah, the concept of fairness, right. So it is you are strong, based on your strength you will survive. Some kind, you can bring that aspect also, survival of fittest also you can bring it here, right. So when the distribution is fair, so there is so much of good competition and there is good productivity also, right. So last year economics Nobel Prize was given for 2021 economics Nobel Prize. No. Any guesses? You didn't study for films? That was 2020. 21? It was given to 3 American economists, so who brought out the same like case study approach, right, from real world situations. So the real world restaurants, right, about some employment related aspect like wage problem in the economy. So basically there are 2 observations. One of it is that if you increase daily wage per hour, right, what it does, it doesn't affect the employment. That was one of the key takeaway from them. What is it? If you increase the daily wage of employees per hour, right, usually what happens when you make it compulsory that wage should be increased, so then employers go for fewer number of employees to save money. That is the logic, right? But through their empirical study in some of the restaurants in Pennsylvania and all, so they came up with that is not the case. In fact, it increases the employment. How and why, you read it, right? No, it questions your logic, right? The logic says something like this. So now they were given economics Nobel Prize for their economic excellence, right? So they were the excellent in their field of economic research. So now they found out through empirical. I forgot the exact word for what kind of case studies. It is something related to what we are discussing here. right? So there may be economists, that ecological economists are studying similar phenomenon in forest, and they might come up with, right, certain research which might win them the Nobel prizes. The second observation was that if there are more number of immigrants coming into a country, it doesn't affect the either employment opportunities or wages of the native population. It actually increases it. That was their observation, right? If more number of immigrants are coming, so this is in the context of protectionism, right? That is happening around the world. So the right wing rise, right? Populism. So why I am mentioning is that maybe one can start with these kind of example also in the context that how empirical studies, right, or the case study approach has become important or vital in just understanding deeply the economic concepts, right. So the gravitational wave was possible through so much of collaboration, so much of research, the gravitational wave experiment, right. So to hearing its sound, to feeling it, right, that to show that it's a physical entity. All of you are aware of that, right? Yeah. So these are the things, and then in the conclusion you can talk about how we are moving into a kind of a future where, at what rate Amazon forests are cleared, at what rate, again we say the forest in India has increased. Have a critical look at it. They are not natural forests, they are not virgin forests, they are not dense forests, they are not rain forests. The forests which are increasing are mainly through social and farm forestry, right. So can we learn something from that? No, right. So they are mainly they are used as mainly for supporting agricultural systems and so other means, not from the biodiversity viewpoint. So in the conclusion you can see, you can leave it open ended. So in that kind of future, when the forests are dispersed, when the forests are no more existing, so as we humanity, what can we learn from? In Hindi they say ganta, something like that. No, don't write that. Right. So that is topic 1, right. And what is the topic 2? Poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world, right. So why are they called as unacknowledged legislators?
They give ideas, guidance to society. They're not officially.
Okay. So they give ideas, they criticize the authority, the power structures, establishment. Then now closely look at the topic. It says that poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world, right. So it makes a conclusion that they are the legislators of the world, but unacknowledged, right. It is not like putting it as an opinion that they can be considered as legislators of the world. It says that they are unacknowledged legislators of the world. So they are our legislators, but they aren't acknowledged. I can say that they are the unelected. You could have said that they are the unelected legislators of the world.
So they rule the mind of the leaders. They rule the mind of the leaders.
Now I am just first discuss the topic. Like, can we say that they are the unelected legislators of the world? Are the meanings same? So what is the difference? If I say they are the unelected, it can be one of the dimensions in your essay.
Unelected as in they are accepted by the majority of the people, but there's no formal election as such. Unacknowledged as in they hold the position by virtue of their work, but no one recognizes them.
Okay. So they actually hold the position when we say unacknowledged. So they are elected or selected, but they are already, we can say that they are legislators. So when we say unelected, they are not yet legislators. It's called as oxymoron, maybe. You say contradictory thing, right, which doesn't make any sense. Okay. So you might have already done your research from where this topic has come, where the topic has come from. So there is a famous English poet, P.B. Shelley, Shelley, P.B. Shelley, Percy B. Shelley. So in his work, The Defense of Poetry. So the defense of poetry is a prose. It's an essay. It's not a poet where he gave the line, right? About poets being unacknowledged legislators of the world. So the defense of poetry in 1821, right? Again, this is not a standard approach. Even if you knew the name of the book, name of the poet, the year, don't start with that line in your essay, right? So start in such a way that it is obvious. Start in such a way that anyway it is obvious to the reader also that they may be knowing, right? Matlab, you have to sound bit intelligent here. You got the point? So use in certain context in the introduction or after that, but not as if you are highlighting it, that this is the book, from here it came. You have that tendency, right, write in the introduction, you know a fact, right? So you will write, only you know the fact, right? No one else in the competition knows it. So you want to highlight that you know the fact in the introduction. So some people have the tendency. So that is when these examples are, have become cliched. So you are always like this. You only know Rajaram Mohan Roy. You only know APJ Abdul Kalam sir, right? So you keep mentioning the same example irrespective of the. So now cheetah is coming in every essay. Right? Cheetah is not just introduced in the forest. So it is introduced in your essays as well, right? Don't know, it won't survive for long. In your essays, I will destroy it, I will kill it, right? So anything that is dominant, the mainstream, suddenly you go for it. So that you should avoid. So I have come up with a formula for that. When you are writing an essay, right, for this you should possess minimum common sense and minimum kind of open-mindedness. When you are writing, the moment this obvious example comes, how do you know this is obvious or not? The first formula is, the source of it is general studies, the modern history, the art and culture, the things you have read again and again and again. So throw them into dustbin. That is number one. Second, obvious is that in current affairs it's a dominant issue that everybody is discussing. During COVID, only COVID was coming. So I have seen, these, I have read my current affairs from the essays. Right? So not from the newspapers. So during COVID-19 only, COVID, even now it is alive, the COVID. So these topics, like somebody showed in the morning that the COVID example is still a dominant. So there is nothing wrong in bringing them. Now, can you bring it in a different perspective, different light? Instead of just fitting the same example for every topic, can you look at the topic from a different perspective? The second way, can you look closer into the issue, extract other unknown details or smaller details that everyone is unaware of? Where will you find them? Some of the specialized, magazines, publications, if it is sciences, research articles. So there you will find the nuances of these things. For example, take the example of Gandhi only. So now there is a topic on, the silence. We had given a topic on silence. The silence it has here only, right? Silence has very many meanings. Yeah, right. The silence has many meanings or something like this. So now there is a philosophy behind silence. If you search Google, there are people who have written why Gandhiji used to go silent, right? During the fast, during the satyagraha, he was not talking. So there is a philosophy behind it. So the philosophy people don't mention anywhere. They write just the what aspect of the issue. He used to go silent, and it used to give certain results, right? Why, how, right? So those things are mostly forgotten. So you have to make things non-obvious, you have to go into the depth of it. So coming to this particular topic, so Shelley mentions in The Defense of Poetry So what I read is that he himself wanted to change the politics of the day. Now the context is that the poet who has given this particular statement, he himself was inspired, was self-motivated to change the politics of the day. So you might have heard, speak truth to power, right? Remove that, unrestrained, unjust authority from the power, either through revolution or whatever means. So these were all the ideas they were all deliberating in their poetry. Now this topic says that poets are unacknowledged legislators of the world. It doesn't say of a country, it doesn't say of a state or something, it talks about the world. So it universalizes, it kind of applies to the entire humanity. Now when you look at the world is not a uniform system, right? It's a uniform world. It has so much of diversity, it has so many nations, every nation has a different political system, right? Again, every political system will not have legislators, right? So you have to ask the question, can I universalize? Is this what the topic is saying is universally applicable, right? If you take the humanity perspective, yes, it is. But if you take humanity plus what humanity has created, the systems, the religions, the dogma, the ideologies, everything, right? The cultures, can it be applied to them also? It becomes no, right? So here in the essay, just like in the previous topic, in the introduction, give the context and the significance, right? But you have to be practical and objective in this essay. These poets are called as romantic poets, not romantic in that sense. In what sense? Brahmastra sense, right? So he married her also, doing Brahmastra only. So these romantic people are, they fantasize in the sense that they live in the ideal world, right? They give importance to individuals, they give importance to an ideal world where everything is fair, the concepts of utopia, Ramarajya, right? So something goes against reality. They give deep insights. Good. Whenever I hear the word insights, I get happy. Even in essay, if somebody has written insights, I round it off. It looks good. So they give deep insights, right? That is what he's saying. So see, you have to be objective. You have to look into the topic in a very more practical sense, right? Now, in the today's context, now don't look into the past only. So in the today context, can you consider poets as the legislators of the world? Right? You can consider them as the prisoners. Right? So they can be beheaded. Right? So they can be thrown somewhere, right? So in the today's context, what do you see? Like one of the dimensions could be, this is how you have to start thinking, not like directly, getting, you can get 10 poets example, their work, and you can tell that one poet talked about untouchability, so untouchability is a fundamental right, abolition of it, Article 17. That is the only thing, right? So then one talks about rights for women. A poet has written only about rights for women, so he is the legislator of the, so no reservation for women. So, right. So one has written only about Dalits. So there are poets for every section of the society, for every, they represent every human emotion, every human section, every human aspiration, anything related to human. So you can go on giving examples, but that doesn't constitute the entire essay. So 2 to 3 pages you can write about the more important features. So here the poets could be these romantic poets, right? Like in Kannada literature we have this Navodaya, Navya, Dalita and Bandaya, Pragatipara, right? So especially the romantic time, it was not there. So they wanted to just go with whatever was there, right. So later, this Bandaya, Dalita and all, so they were all like against the establishment. They wanted to bring order, they wanted to bring justice for everyone. So you can go into the diversity of poets here. The poets could be from Sangam literature. So in Sangam literature, there are 8 anthologies of Sangam literature. So out of 8 anthologies, around 2 to 3 talk about love. The remaining talk about kings, their powers, right? How they ruled, how they should have ruled, praising the kings, something. They still talk about the politics, right? If you know 1 or 2 examples from there, you can start from there, right? And then move into the Bhakti, Sufi, and in Hindi literature also there are so many Bhakti saints, Bhakti poets, right? And then there are in Sufi also we have so many. So, but again, it doesn't make sense, right? Giving too many poets and their poems and saying that they are the unacknowledged legislators. You have to put full stop after 1 or 2 pages. Identify the most important. If somebody has attempted this particular topic, people would have definitely written about Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore, right? About nationalism. Then Sarojini Naidu people would have written. And then there are many Hindi like Dinkar, if somebody knows. There are many in Kannada, if somebody knows, like you could give example of Kuvempu or Vikru Gokak or the later poets, and definitely at least 2 to 3 names of contemporary poets. We hardly know anyone today who writes, who are winning these laurels and big awards and prizes for poetry. We don't know. So that brings us to the present context. Do we have a poet in Andhra Pradesh that was there, the folk poets? There was one person who was arrested for doing the street, what is his name? He was arrested. So the Naxal movement had the inspiration from many poets actually, right? Varavara Rao, and before him there was one more. So the Naxal movement had inspiration from many so-called progressive writers who are now labeled as urban Naxals. Right, progressive thinkers, progressive poets. So they were trying to what? Speak truth to the power, or change the power, replace the power, or create a force that could challenge the power or something. So that can also create a dimension. Need not be legislator, but a force to unsettle the power or legislators or legislations themselves, right? So the different dimensions could be explored, and then why we don't see that is an important dimension for me. So where you can talk about the weaknesses within democracies, right? The kind of leadership we have today without mentioning anyone. Again, so mind that this is not the recent phenomenon, right? So this thing is there for past 3 decades, right? Since all this liberalization, globalization, this targeting of any particular section according to the changing governments is the norm. The media is always with them, right? So one or the other side. So these things are not the phenomenon of this government, right? So in essay you should not have this in mind, and only because you have only examples from recent memory, the recent current affairs, you tend to think that only this government is villainous and it is doing these kind of stuff. But I used to prepare during the UPA era, right? During 2006 to 2010, right? After India Shining Moment we started. During that time the Insights on India blog was a radical website to criticize the UPA government. So I used to write every kind of article. I mean, that is how it became popular, right? You write one-sided, radical things. People come and start reading about it. So then converted into UPSC when I became unemployed, jobless, right? So it gave me a lifeline. But before that, that is what I used to do. So one article, I had written Jagdish Titler or Hitler or traitor. So there was some case going on about 1984. The anti-Sikh riots. So he was about to be convicted for that. One of Sajjan Singh or something, he got convicted. This guy escaped. Is he alive or dead? I don't know. So anyway, I had written, then he kind of sent a mail, it's just defamatory, that you should remove. How can you say me, So these people are civil at that time, at least, It's not a threatening one, but they sent. Then I removed it. I removed it because of out of happiness, that, So in a village, I am sitting and writing something, and somebody in Delhi are reading this. So for me, that was what important, not becoming unacknowledged legislator of the world, right? So I removed it and I became happy. Then I got that confidence. People will read, and people are reading, right? The internet is an equalizer, absolute equalizer. If you know how to use its force, how to use the resources that internet gives you, the platform, so you can be anything. All it requires is, don't be docked in a shipyard, right? So go and explore the seas, right? Right. So to some extent, is it clear this? So try to think of these kind of dimensions. See, everything that these dimensions come from your own originality. Now, when you start coming and showing these essays, please don't mention anything that I have said in the class. That is the start of the originality. So the session I am trying to just trigger your thought process, to think in certain direction, right? But unfortunately, what happens? Some people will write the same thing. So I have written so many examples. I am not giving you, right? I am not telling you. There are so many poets, right? Somebody said poetry is not linguistic aromatherapy, right? Linguistic aromatherapy. I mean, people think that poetry is solution for everything, all your diseases, all your human problems. In poetic way, in literary way, they wanted to say poetry is not linguistic aromatherapy. You can similarly say it is not a linguistic Ayurveda therapy, anything. Instead of saying aromatherapy in your own original word, you can use it's not linguistic allopathy or something. Right. So there are some radical poets, you can use their names, right? But till the end, the topic should have that essence, that there should be a balance between the politics and the literature in the essay. It should not be too much of, if you are a student of English literature, it should not be too much of English literature and poetry in the essay, right? So how will you balance with contemporary political problems, right? By trying to go to the literature and saying that, can it really give all the solutions, all the philosophy, all the inspiration to address? So what is the duty of a legislator? What does a legislator do? Makes laws and laws both, right? So they make laws, and so they mainly make laws, right? So we elect them to make LAWS laws for us and for everyone, right? Here, anything that is a poet saying, can it become a law, right? When does something become a law? When it has universal acceptability through representation or whatever be the form of government we have chosen, right? So now the poet is writing from the comfort of his farmhouse, his forest, his home, wherever he or she is living, right? Now, on what basis? Is it just because he is kind of a philosopher king, the concept of Plato, that the philosopher should rule the world, the intellectuals should rule the world, not the ordinary criminals or the people who get elected through any means, right? So these people, just because they are intelligent, because they possess a different perspective and different idea, kind of intellectual depth, should you believe in them? Should you take what they say as a law? So that can we formalize the process? It can be one of the dimensions. Can we formalize, and that the concept of Rajya Sabha, putting filmmakers, poets, beautiful heroines, intelligent heroines, sorry, stereotypes, heroes, sports people. In a way, it draws from this particular topic. But can we put more number of poets in the legislature? Just Can we demand 33% reservation for all the poets? In our parliament and in our legislative assemblies? So they are good in putting, inputs to legislations. Should we do that? If you are saying no here, then you should say no throughout the essay also. Is it logical? Why is it illogical? We are what?
Many words are actually like very well acclaimed and their inputs are taken, especially in UPSC, like William words, all those famous words are actually.
Of course, during the time of all these revolutions, these Voltaire, Rousseau and other, they were also philosophers and poets, right? Now the question is why they should not be given reservation in parliament.
Because history also even during the rules of the kings and other things also the council of ministers is predominantly occupied by the poets also, including naming of
It's a very good argument. Nice. So what he is saying is that during the times of Krishna Devaraya, right, or in Akbar or in Mughal emperors before Aurangzeb, Kalidas, right, he is one of the famous poet. At that time there were no English poets, so he was there, right. So they were patronized, they were given all kinds of support, and they were actually taken as advisors of the kings. No, why not? Like, why not give reserve? Why not take them now also?
So, but many
Can we have a chief poetic advisor?
But many a times what happens is poets are idealistic in nature. We need realists, rationalists. There's a conflict of interest there. That's why they should be.
So you need more realists. Okay. So why are we moving towards more realism nowadays? So in the world of kings, emperors, so we had writers, poets, artists, performers in their court, in addition to the philosophers and other people, right? So now the world is, why we talk about realism in everything, geopolitics, politics, economics, we talk about realism. Just a question like. So what he said was because we want realism. So these poets are idealistic in nature, right? That is why they should not be elected or given some kind of reservation. One of his argument. So my counter argument is that just like for curiosity, I am asking why we are moving towards more of realism. Why it has become the more desirable.
It's more like a reaction. So we have aggressive countries, for instance, in the context of India, we have aggressive countries like China, who follow the
Again, that is also driven by their own realistic. Right.
ambitious maybe.
because people want results.
Because people want results.
So then the bottom-up approach is now implemented more than top approach, which is you need to know the ground reality.
Good.
And,
So you need to know the ground realities. Now the concept is bottom-up approach. Okay. So can't we say that it is poets who know the ground realities as well, though they are
not
idealistic?
present context, because for example if you take the poet Papa, he also used to be a warrior and involved in the governments, like
Yeah.
closely watching all those things. But in now in the real present context, that is not the case.
Okay. But again, see, if somebody has come up with, for example, there are Dalit poets, right? So only they can actually portray their Dalit experiences very well to the other population who haven't experienced those kind of pain, suffering, trauma, all these exploitations, right? So don't you think they represent?
So although in the Dalit movement in Karnataka we want to talk about, although it started with a good intention, after a certain point of time, because of need for power and all, even that got disrupted.
So it basically power corrupted the poets.
Yeah, that was the case.
So there is inverse relationship here, right?
But when you ultimately
So we can say that if at all we elect them as legislators, they get corrupted. They forget their poetry, right? Huh? Yes.
They need to maintain this
we
ground.
say that we are giving ideal importance to realism and forgetting idealism. It is just that we are accepting that we will be failing to achieve idealism. So
Okay.
it should be a balance between realism and idealism. even if you are taking them into as a part of the legislation, they will only be a part of the legislator showing the direction. They would not be deciding everything on their own. So even when we speak of Papa, also he is the one who said that Manushyakulam Tarandevaru, it's all men or all human beings are same and equal in minds and
Okay. So there is this concept of individualism nowadays. What is that? You might have read. There is rising the growth of individualism nowadays. Yes.
Self-centeredness.
Self-centeredness. No, narcissism is extreme. Like narcissism is obsessive appreciation of your own self. Right. Any example you can think of narcissism in India? Selfie culture, yes, correct. So she went for a safer example. So did any example strike your mind when I asked that question?
Social media.
No, name of one individual who is a narcissist in India today. No, I'm just asking this question. So yeah, so
Who's that?
what? She said Prime Minister. I don't know. Right.
Also, when we talk about poets, they are very critical about a particular thing, like any theme.
They may not be objective also.
If we are about a Dalit poet is there, he will be very critical about Dalit issues only. A generalized point of view won't be there. So he won't be, he will be the legislator, he won't be able to support another point of view.
No, so this brings to the important observation, they actually don't give the solutions. Right? In their poetry, they are in poetic way, so they are throwing light on the issue. Right? They are in a poetic way, they are explaining the situation in their own way, in as profound way as possible. Right? Using all figures of speech and everything. The what do you call, the tools of literature they will use and say it. But seldom you will see that anyone giving solution in their poem. Right? So now last year when Obama was, not last year, when Obama for second term when he got elected, so usually what they do is that during their oath taking ceremony, all US presidents, they invite a scholar or a poet or a writer to recite one of their work. Right? There was one girl, Amanda Gorman. Right? She was invited and she recited a poetry that day. Right? It was something related to the same thing, something about the topic, talking about the power, talking about. So you can just search her name, Amanda, Amanda, Gorman, I think, Gorman. Right? Instantly she became, she is a young poet. So at that time she was 18-year-old or something. Very forcefully she recited her poet in front of nearly a billion people who were watching around the world. Because Obama, when he got elected second time, that was not just history repeating, once again history making. Right? So that was watched and she was given that kind of audience. She became instant celebrity. Her poems, she keeps talking about the same thing. Then came the Trump. So I was following a Twitter account. She was writing against the unjust administration of Trump rule. So maybe if you are aware of these kind of examples, you can bring them also. In the contemporary scenario, right? Context. Okay. So here I like to bring technology in the conclusion. So now the artificial intelligence are writing poems. Right? So something you can think about conclusion, or when you are going towards the conclusion. Now artificial intelligence is able to create poem. There you can read poems by artificial computers. You haven't? They can write news reports. They went to the extent of writing stories and they are able to create paintings that we know, but they are able to write poetry also. Right? They use all kinds of algorithms, they are aware of every poem that was written ever in the world. Right? So permutation, combination, and then right. So they can bring, but they can never bring the emotion. They can never bring the intention, the purpose, the philosophy behind it, right? So in that context, you can bring. Can they become? Yeah. So they can become. They can, if they have their own kind of world. Machines, computers, as you might have seen in the fiction movies, right? So they will have their own. There is a movie called Mother. I have seen Mother. It's a very good movie. You have seen? You people don't watch movies. So it's an English movie, science fiction. So it's basically the humans are held as captives, right? In a very calibrated, in a very regulated manner, they bring children out to the world, the machines. So they have this artificial way of creating womb, but giving birth to children. Somehow the children are killed if they start independently thinking, if they start showing any independent emotions, if they start showing any signs of rational thinking. Right. Somehow one girl survives, and the fight is between, and she is, convinced that the robot is the mother. That is how the mother comes. So the robot is actually the mother of the child. So there is only one, this super robot, which has the factory of these children. Right. Somehow she kills that and escapes from it. It's a very interesting story. So there is a philosophy behind these kind of. We call them as dystopian movies. A future where the humanity is either extinct or on the verge of extinction. The world is getting destroyed. So what we'll have in that future, right? So now we might call most of the poets as romantic, but later what happened? Just like in science fiction, what came to be a reality. So what poets had said centuries ago have become realities nowadays. So that could be another conclusion that you can think of. We'll just discuss one more topic and we'll end. So history is a series of victories won by the scientific man over the romantic man. So what is the meaning of this topic? I think this is also misinterpreted. I will tell why. This topic. What is the meaning of this topic? History is the series of victories won by the scientific man over the romantic man. Now what about the first part? That is very clear. Won by scientific man over the romantic. The romantic which we were discussing. Right. Ideal. Right. Whose thinking is overpowered by idealism. Romantic man is somebody who fantasizes, who doesn't put things into action. So, but what about the first part of the topic? History is a series of victories won by. So, can somebody say what is the meaning of this topic?
Battles of life. It's talking about battles of life. History as in not specifically history as such, not per se, but it's talking about different fields where it's
Battles of life.
philosophy.
Okay.
So history is accepted only when there are facts.
Mm-hmm.
Then emotions are
Okay.
for like proof is the most important.
Okay.
Like Ashoka.
So history is accepted only when there are evidences, facts, to prove that it was historical. Okay. So how is it related to victories won over by scientific man over the romantic man? I read one essay, only one, somebody wrote. So what they have done is that in the examples, in the arguments, they have only mostly talked about all the wars from the ancient to the recent, the modern history. The battles, wars, as I said, it can be at individual or it can be between nations, between clans, groups, tribals, cultures, right? So that he says the history is that victory, but that is the very narrow interpretation of the topic. If somebody has written only about battles, wars and everything, I think their marks will come down, right? So now the history is not just wars and battles. Of course, when you think of history, that is what comes to your picture, mind. But history is what? History is growth. Nice. Yes, what is history? But what is history? Of course, that is second part is evident. Now the question is, what is history? Is history just wars? He said history is growth. We can say history is evolution.
Sir, actually, much has been written and admired about your past. But when Sir M. Visvesvaraya went to see it for the first time, he saw it and he said, what a waste of energy. That is when they constructed the Sharavati and everyone.
So what is history about this?
I mean, it tells us that scientific approach of a man, because everybody looked at it in the romantic way, but scientific approach of that particular man in the past led us to create energy through which we are surviving from the past.
So history is basically creation, right? So we can also say growth and evolution. But if you closely look into history, right? History is nothing but creation, right? Throughout the past, since we started thinking, we have created. It can be anything. We have created civilizations. We have created, we have shaped the planet, right? We have created, invented things that didn't exist before throughout the history, right? Every kind of art is a creation, right? It can be something, the performing art, or it can be visual art or anything. Every form is, that is why you study art and culture, because man has created something. So now the topic says that, so here the victory doesn't mean something, winning over a battle or, winning a fight. So it's about one who is thinking and one who is not thinking. The victory of thought over, you can say thoughtlessness or stagnant thinking or something like that. So it is basically, that is when everything, Renaissance or industrialization, every step of our history, right? If somebody created something out of something or out of nothing, it was all because of, the topic says that, scientific thinking. Now again, you have to be original. So can you just blindly go with this? Right? In the Poet, we were discussing that they are the legislators of the world. The romantic poets, they have also created, right? In the way, if they might not have, they have created a work of art at least. If not, they haven't created a pyramid or a Taj Mahal. They have inspired Taj Mahal, right? We can say that. So again, you have to go more objectively with the topic. Here you have to say that history is a series of victories won by the. So again, victory it says because the things that worked for humanity, right? At the end of the day, the things that worked for the humanity. When we say things worked for the humanity in terms of human development, human prosperity, right? So are these scientific inventions, right? So today if you now the media creates that the world, as we discussed in the previous topic, we are moving into a bleak future, the dystopian, very terrible, horrible future. Or even the present is also very horrible. Everyone is fighting, everyone is killing each other. There is so much of communalism in the country. Everyone hates each other. That is what we are told, right? But the truth is that today there are less number of deaths than there were 100 years ago. From any reason. It can be war, it can be cancer, it can be any disease resulted by any infectious disease, right? So less people are dying today than they were 100 years ago. The life expectancy has increased compared to 100 years ago. there is less poverty in the world today than compared to 100 years ago, or you can just go back and back, right? So we are made to believe that we were rich in the pre-Mughal period or during the Mughal period, right? So at that time the concentration of the wealth was more unequal than what it is today, right? Almost the entire wealth was held by certain princes or emperors. Our history books do not talk about the lives of the common people. You open any history textbook, they only talk about the emperors, their battles, what they created, but never about the lives of the common. It is always spoken by the romantic people, right? Who talks about the history of common people? The folk literature, right? So in this essay, again, if you just blindly interpret narrowly going with the topic, you will go saying that from fire and wood to wheels to the modern artificial intelligence, or all this what are these realities? Augmented reality, virtual reality, VR. What is VR? One more AX, combination, extended reality, XR, right? So in this world we tend to believe that this all because of critical thinking and scientific this thing. So again, earlier first topic we were discussing about interdisciplinary, how we are giving more importance to humanities nowadays, the literature nowadays, right? So why they are important to humanity and how they are integral part of the history. So you have to say that history is the victory won by every stakeholders, right? Starting with the commonest man to everyone is part of the history, right? So the king didn't happen to be king, like he exploited someone or somebody gave him resources, right? You elected a prime minister, right? So everybody has a stake in it. So in this essay you have to deal with this like 1/3 part of it, and then you talk about how unjust the history has been. So why inaccurate the history has been. So why we create fight over history. Why there are, like today also we fight battles. There are certain things which are not victorious, or you have never won anything in histories, right? The battle of perception, the battle of so who is important, who is not important. So it's a continuous battle also without victory. So this government comes says that person was a hero. So another person will come and erect another statue of someone and then say that he was a hero. So you can say that it's a perpetual thing. History itself is a battle, like continuous battle or something between the powerful or the powerless, or two powerful people or something. So you can create multiple dimensions if you start critically questioning the topic, right? So yeah, so here the conclusion. So what is today present is tomorrow history, right? Right. So now how do you put it? How do you want to put it in the conclusion? Whatever is happening today is going to be history after 20 years or 50 years, 100 years. Now, so what kind of victory we are talking about? What kind of battles we are talking about in the present context? So what is happening to the world right now? So how will you put 20 years later the same topic, or like 50 years later?
Coming generations must look upward.
So we can put it like history is a series of victories, or history is a victory won by earth over the man. We can put it like that. Good. History is a victory won over by the earth over all the powerful men and women, or something like this. Or if you want to go into more gender thing, it can be won over by women over men. That could be another dimension, right? There is a theory in biology that Y chromosome will get extinct and then all the men will be gone. You haven't read, doctor? It's a very fantasy kind of stuff, but the Y chromosome is getting shortened. right, through natural evolution, whatever happening. So the Y chromosome is getting shortened. That is what I said, studied in BSc genetics. I don't know if it is history now, it is true now, but so there was a theory that Y chromosome will get extinct and then there will be only women. Women can create boys if they want. You don't need Y chromosome. They can, genetic engineering will be so advanced. They can do something. So, yeah. In the conclusion, you can again bring the futuristic dimension. You can talk something about it. The history is much more than the fights between men. Right? There cannot be history without geography. Right? You need geography for the history. Now, if the geography is not supporting, if the geography is not giving you a hand, so what kind of history you will create? Right? So now the geography is against us. Now it's a battle between men and geography. Okay. Shall we complete, or you want me to take any topic? You give me any topic, another one topic we will discuss if you want. Which topic you want? The first one? You cannot step twice in the same river. Okay. So what does it mean? You cannot step twice in the same river. So again, this topic, is not a full statement or sentence here. So the full statement is, you cannot step twice in the same river because the river is not the same, neither are you. Right? You cannot step in the same river because the river is not the same and you are also not the same. The underlying philosophy is that the change. Right? So circumstances change, the people change, geography changes. Yes? We have to adapt. Yes, we have to adapt to the changes. So now the topic says that you cannot step twice in the same river. So what it actually means, according to my understanding, is that the river has already changed. The river you stepped into before was a different river. The river you are stepping today is a different river. So you are not stepping twice in the same river. You are stepping for the first time in another river. We might have named Kaveri, Godavari. To speak in a literal sense, right? The name may be same, but the river is not the same. That is what the author is saying. Now the topic, it doesn't mean that you have to just blindly go with it. Right? So in literal way you can argue that no, you can step twice, thrice, lifelong you can live in the river. Right? I mean, the essay gives that freedom actually. You should not be scared about bringing these kind of dimensions. Right? So in the future, induced by climate change, when the world is full of water, there are no rivers, there are no oceans, we don't know what will happen. I watched the movie Water World. No? So it had the highest budget before Titanic, the movie Water World. There was a costly movie made before Titanic. Titanic then became the costliest movie ever made. They spent $1.5 billion or $2 billion in 98 or 98, I think, at that time, but they got like more than that. Right? That is also something related to water. So it's a distant future, right? The thing is, when you watched movies or when you read novels, when you read non-fiction things, so they will give you some kind of creative ideas which you can bring into essays. Otherwise, what happens? You will keep talking about the same, the current affair concepts that you have seen, right? So here you should ask why things change, why people change, right? Why we say change is the constant, right? That is first thing, like why change is the norm. It's a philosophical question. Why we keep changing, right? So what are the philosophers that have talked about why change is? Then people say change is desirable. Why people say change is desirable? There are two questions. Why change takes place and why change is desirable? We say change is desirable, right? So, ಅದೇ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ. ತಾವರ ಕಳಿವುಂಟು ಜಂಗಮ ಕಳಿವಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ. In Kannada there is a saying by Basavanna that anything that is stagnant will decay, anything that is moving will sustain or prosper or grow, right? So why does it grow? And then when they say that you cannot step twice in the same river, so what is wrong with it? If at all something hasn't changed, let us assume that something hasn't changed, right? Stepping into it, it can be a relationship, it can be an institution, it can be a polity, it can be a culture or something, right? So if at all somebody adventures to go there, like what is wrong with it, right? Another thing is you cannot step twice in the same river. It talks about the second agent also changing, that the person who is stepping there, he also has changed, right? So now when two changes have taken place, one where you want to go, that has changed, right? And you also have changed, then what happens? It's a hypothetical thing, I don't know, according to your reading, according to your thinking, you can come up with something, right? Now when two changes have taken place, do you consider it as a progress or a drawback? How do you consider it? That is left to you, right? So you think about it and try to get the examples. So now you can definitely apply these things to, like again, you should not be like applying it to political, economic, social, ecological and everything. You can choose like 2 to 3 example where the topic is relevant, right? But beyond that, what are the other dimensions you can think? Time. Very good. The dimension of time you can bring here. So again, one of the reasons you will say in why things change, time is a answer there, right? You can bring the concept of time here, and then you can talk about how time is related to, of course it is related to the change, but in what sense you will relate in the topic, in what way you want to relate it here. Okay, but what about the relevancy of the topic? You cannot, step into the same river twice. You cannot change the. So very good. And why one cannot change the past? It doesn't flow back. Okay, it always moves forward. The time. Okay, by then you will be more experienced. The change is nothing but accumulating more experience, right? So you might have grown more wiser now, right, than you were before. Not repeating the same mistake again, being cautious, avoiding risks, avoiding mistakes. Okay, then
learning through past situation.
Learning through
Past situation, what had happened in
past. Okay, learning through past. Okay, so that's what you have grown more wiser, because you have learnt a lesson from your past mistake, or it can be a mistake or it may not be a mistake, right? Again, you should not look at the topic only from the negative angle, right? Huh? In terms of the opportunity, yes, the opportunity today you might have missed the opportunity. It's someone else's opportunity, or it might be an adversity now. Yesterday it was an opportunity, today it is an adversity. Then?
Impacts that are created.
Okay. So impacts created by the past. So?
At least we can't change the events, but we can change the impacts of it.
Yeah, you cannot change the past, but you can change the impacts of that particular past today. Good. So that is why you should step into the river. That's a good way of thinking, right? What he is saying is that you cannot change the past, you cannot change what changed, but that change will definitely have certain implications. Now, do you want to address those implications by stepping into the river again? Here the river can be anything. For example, it can be a toxic relationship between two individuals, right? It can be, so he's so happy like smiling. So it can be a romantic relationship between two people, right? It can be an institution which is fast evolving, or it can be just internet or something, a phenomenon, a technology or something, right? It can be a different culture or a different region or something, right? In a literal sense, a geography also. So to address the implications, okay, good. Then again, for that you should have that courage and other so-called qualities. So try to address holistically when you are bringing this argument. So try to complete it by doing 360-degree analysis. Then any other dimensions you can think? You can definitely, you should. Sit down and answer. That is a possibility. Like for example, any bad experience can imprison you, right? You can become the yes. Again, why does that happen? You have to analyze in the essay. It's a good dimension to think. So what he's saying is that when you have a bad experience, unpleasant experience, right? So sometimes you might become the prisoner of that particular event, or then because it has suppressed your courage or your imagination, creativity. It has affected you in a mental way. So you may not be able to think anything, grow, or you may not be change also. You have actually changed the year. That is also a change, but not in the positive direction. But why it happens? You have to give like one or two reasoning. So in any of these essays, there should be a reasoning component. Why? If you explain a phenomenon, if you give a statement, 100% follow it by example followed by why aspect. So that is when the why aspect, when you don't have to write why in the essay. That is in your mind to think of a dimension. During brainstorming you can do it, or during on the go when you are writing in the in the flow of the essay you can bring that. But don't mention it as why. The very presence that you are reasoning, you are explaining through reasons, not only through examples. There is difference, right? People explain through examples. What is there? It had happened. That is why. That is the reason. That is not the reason. You have to explain the process. You explain the underlying principle or philosophy behind everything, right? So through that, when we see that kind of reasoning, that is when your essay you can expect 140 to 150 marks. Examples may be superior, apart from all these cliched example, but your score will never cross 125 plus. Okay. So the time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. So I won't discuss much what it says. It is a quote by John F. Kennedy. It says that, so you have to address a problem when there is opportunity, when there is support, when there is resources available. Climate change you address now, right? So don't think of addressing tomorrow. So in most of the global issues, the sun is shining. We still have a window of time, an opportunity. So when we have that, you address. Otherwise, right? So you can. That's what rest of the essays, how and why, you can bring into this. And a ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what ship is for, right? So you have to constantly keep moving. So take risks in life, come out of your comfort zone. So if you are living in Mysore, come to Bangalore, right? If you are living in Jharkhand, come to Bangalore, right? So if you are living in your room, come to library. If you are living in your library, come to my cabin. If you are coming to my cabin, show your essay, right? If you are showing your essay, learn from your mistakes and go back and rectify those mistakes, right? Keep moving, keep progressing, right? So that is how Insights was created. I came out of Mysore. If I was sitting in Mysore, like thinking I will apply for NABARD, I will apply for CAP, I will apply for this and that, I want a secure government job, I wouldn't be collecting fees from you people today. Right. So, and I wouldn't be roaming around in the cars that I use. Right. So you people also, it's a choice, just because you have a choice. So it does not mean that any of them has to be right. So you have to explore more choices. You have to explore more avenues in your life. So just because you have certain choices, the topic says you already have a choice. Some people will not have a choice. Now it says you have a choice. That doesn't mean that is right for you, right? So you have to look into closely or explore other alternative choices, more choices. If you don't have choices, if you have limited choices, you create more choices, right? Creating more choices means more opportunities for other people. So in that thought process, you can write this essay. So basically, these are all interrelated, right? You can use one or two these quotes in another essay. If you want to do that, don't repeat the quote, right? The meaning of the quote you can borrow and you can use in another essay. So for two topics, there are 6 dimensions available, right? So that is a conclusion. So you just have to be open-minded, have strong presence of mind, little bit creative and calm, right? So then you can write very good essays. Okay. Thank you. Wish you all the best.